Six long-range missiles to change the world. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, welcome back Alex, who's been exploring some developments really that have been happening in the geopolitical front that are quite interesting. Very interesting article talking about that. How are you going today, Alex?
Good. How are you going?
Yeah, very good. Now, well, I was going a lot better until I read your article, but it has me all concerned again
Gold to
about what's
zero or
going
gold
on.
to infinity?
Um, it felt like all of that had died down to me a little bit, that we weren't really talking so much about war and we were more focused on the election and things going on there. But is this a bit of a last ditch effort from the outgoing administration to stoke some geopolitical turmoil? I don't know what's going on. Give us the big picture overview. What's actually been happening?
Um, well, 62 days left, I believe, yesterday that Biden has in office. And they've just confirmed that Trump's going to be the incoming president. And they decided to allow Ukraine to fire 6 long-range missiles, US-made missiles, after some strong talk from Russia saying that if any missiles are fired from nuclear-backed allies, therefore pulling Ukraine in, basically saying Ukraine becomes a nuclear country equivalent, that Russia will see it as a direct attack from a nuclear power, and they will respond with nuclear force. So Russia stated that the 1,000 days after the war started, they said, we're going to change our doctrine. This is how we would treat countries that attack us. And the next day they fired. So an interesting escalation when he's not going to be in power in 62 days.
And that's the bit I'm really struggling with to understand here, because on one hand, you've got that change in doctrine from Russia, like that. Is that the corresponding response you would expect in this scenario where you've got
that was talked about in September this year. So
right? Okay, so
this was not a response to, hey, we're going to give Ukraine missiles.
So
This
it's just
was,
coming up again now because that's happened, that we're now speaking about it again.
Precisely.
Yeah, okay. But like how significant is that, do you think? Is that or what? I mean, obviously you don't know, but what do you think the thought process is that's going through Putin's head here when he's looking at this? Is he going, okay, we need to take decisive action in response to what's going on? Do you think he's looking beyond the next 62 days? Like how do you think about that?
Well, I mean, what's interesting is this basically brings NATO in. Now, 6 days ago, I think, or 5 days ago, Scholz, who's the Chancellor of Germany, softened on Russia. So he took a phone call, spoke to Putin, first time in 2 years, spoke to Putin about peace, and said to Ukraine, we will not provide you with Taurus missiles, which is the equivalent of what US has just provided. So Germany softened and the US hardened, and then they're the two biggest NATO allies within NATO. So, Russia right now would be sitting there going, 62 days, can we wait? Or 62 days, is this a big enough escalation that they knew would be escalated that we have to respond?
So I think that's such an important point, the NATO aspect here, to go, does this, I mean, we know Trump doesn't have necessarily strong allegiance to any of these organizations if they don't align with what he's sort of thinking, what he wants to do. Does this highlight potentially the fraction or the fragmenting of NATO here, where there's just not that cohesion going forward? Because it seems like we're starting to see the cracks emerging here, at least.
Okay, so the Russian war started with basically because Ukraine was talking about coming into NATO. I'm sure there's more to it than what we know, but that's the fundamental thing, that Putin has always asked for a buffer between NATO and Russia, as he sees NATO as the aggressor. It's 1,000 days now into this war. It's been going for nearly 3 years. And NATO and the US have been pretty united in what's going on. But 5 days ago, obviously, Scholz made that call to Russia. They're not providing missiles, which is in exact opposition now to what the US has just done. And with 62 days before a change of administration, it's the first real big fracturing of NATO that I've seen in that period.
And it wasn't just NATO here, because you also mentioned in the article about some of these smaller nations. You know, you had those Nordic nations distributing war preparation materials. Obviously, that would is going to cause concern in those countries. Is that a bit of propaganda potentially? Do you think the concerns are real there? Like, how do you view that side of it? Because I can imagine if you're on the ground there, you've probably got a very different perspective to what we've had back here, thinking, oh, well, 62 days, you know, like it probably is a very different feel.
Well, I mean, it could go either way. It's a pretty big aggression. It goes against what Russia was saying, that how they were going to react in September. So there's nothing new. He said we will retaliate potentially with nuclear force. I think they have every right to fear that this is could be pretty serious. And I'd just be saying 62 days. Let's hope that everything holds together.
And at the end of the day, we don't actually know what the Trump policies will be, or we've got a feeling based on what he's said and based on what we've heard that it's going to be towards resolving that conflict. But there's no certainties. Like these things have not been able to be resolved historically easily. So it's a bold assumption to assume that Trump can just come in and do it.
And if you actually look at what's going on worldwide, there has been a heightening of what's going on. You know, there's been greater sanctions on Iran because everyone's saying Iran's backing Russia. North Korean troops we now know are fighting for Russia. And finally, yesterday, the other interesting one was when a Chinese-owned supply ship, they believe, cut a cable in the Baltic Sea. So they first blamed the Russians. Arguably, it could be the Russians, because I had read that that ship was being captained by a Russian captain. But a Chinese ship looks like it may have cut a cable in the Baltic Sea. So you've got a lot more countries coming in. So arguably, that's why the US has reacted this way, because it is worldwide becoming a bigger issue.
It's all a little bit stressful, and makes me wonder, because we're seeing, looking at Bitcoin this morning, back to all-time highs, gold's pushing back up again after that little pullback from all-time highs. It's a very interesting time, because we don't really know the outcome, but we do know that some of these, whether it's the precious metals, whether it's crypto, are responding in anticipation of something going on out there. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, it's scary. So I just hope that, and who knows if Trump's actually going to be the one to fix it. It hasn't been fixed in 3 years. So you can't rely on that either. So yeah, it's a scary 62 days, and then we'll see what the change is. And that may be positive, it may not be.
We'll continue watching as we always do, but for the time being, I assume the metals are telling us something in particular. So we'll keep watching those signals, because they tend to always know what's going on some level.
Yeah. And we will know that if it goes to zero, the apocalypse has happened, and that's just the way it is.
Right. So
no one cares.
We don't need to bet on that one, because we won't be concerned about that if that happens. So
you won't be here to be concerned.
Won't be here to be concerned. Well, on that sobering note, thank you for your work on that today, Alex. Really appreciate your time and effort on that one. And we'll continue to watch as these things unfold. So thank you.
Thanks for having me again.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.